the viewers and welcome to V Concept College English. My name is Ernest. Today I want to start a new series on lessons and structure. And this series is entitled 200 Commonly Misused Expressions in Everyday English. 200 Commonly Misused Expressions in Everyday English. Therefore, in this series, we shall look at the reasons for misused expressions in English and offer tips for avoiding these mistakes in your speech and writings. Kindly follow up with all the videos that we shall be uploading in this series to catch a glimpse of the full gist. Have a happy viewing. Welcome to the 10th episode of our 21 in 1 video series entitled 200 Commonly Misused Expressions in Everyday English. I'm so excited about this episode today as I believe you are going to learn something new and or discover a confirmation of what you already know. This is because I made a great effort to draw up some expressions which I believe are commonly conflicted around the rules of adjectives in everyday English. Therefore, in this episode, we shall be considering word sets 81 to 90. And the expressions under these episodes include she's taller than I, she's more taller than I, she's the best of the two, she is the most tallest, she is cleverer than he, it's more superior, she is very unique, I prefer rice than beans, my house is more far than yours, the two first classes. So these are the expressions that we shall be considering in this episode. And as our custom has been, we shall pick an expression from here and bring it to our table of analysis where we have about 4 rules. The first one that is in red is non-standard, error type, standard, and grammar tips. Under the non-standard, we shall use the word sets that we are bringing from there to construct a non-standard expression to reflect the possible errors around the expression in everyday English. Then under the error type, we shall attempt to classify the possible errors that we must have spotted with the non-standard expression as constructed. And after that, we try to reconstruct the expression in standard usage in green. And finally, we shall offer some grammar tips that can help to avoid the possible errors that we must have spotted with the non-standard sentence as constructed. So this is what we shall be doing in this video today. Right away, let's get started with the first expression, which is she is taller than I. Our first non-standard expression in this episode is Sandra is taller than I, with the words than I underlined in the expression to indicate a lexical error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. And when you look at the expression very closely, you would discover that 2 persons are being described in it, Sandra and then I. Then the questions that we would ask would be things like whether this pronoun should take the subject case or whether it should take the object case. When we go over the grammar tips, we have that he is taller than I is incomplete and incorrect. It is grammatically incomplete and grammatically incorrect. The correct expression under the standard usage could be things like Sandra is taller than me, or Sandra is taller than I am. Then we continue with our grammar tips. For the second one, we have that than is a preposition in A and can only attract object pronoun. So when you look at the A standard usage of the expression, we would have something like Sandra is taller than me. So instead of Sandra is taller than I, you would say Sandra is taller than me. The reason is that than here is a preposition. It's a simple preposition. And as a preposition, it can only be followed by object pronoun and not subject pronoun. Therefore, if you are going to leave this expression in this form, then this subject pronoun would have to change to object pronoun. Then the expression can take this short shape like Sandra is taller than me, and not Sandra is taller than I, considering than as a preposition. Alternatively, when we look at our second grammatic, we would have that than is a conjunction in be and requires a verb in the second clause. When you look at the be here, you would discover that Sandra is taller than I am is what we have. The reason is that than is no longer, that is, this word than is no longer serving as a preposition in this expression, but as a conjunction. And as a conjunction, it can only be functioning to join two clauses together, where Sandra is taller is the first clause, and then I am becomes the second clause. So it's only a conjunction that can join two clauses together. And when a conjunction is going to join two clauses together, then this expression I, or this pronoun I, must have to attract a verb. So for this expression to take anything subject personal pronoun like I, then there must be a verb following it. So we are going to have something like Sandra is taller than I am, where than is a conjunction. But if you remove this am, then the expression becomes grammatically incomplete and meaningless or senseless, as the case may be. But for the first one, like we have already explained, Sandra is taller than me, object personal pronoun can come after a preposition. Therefore, this expression is grammatically stable. So instead of saying Sandra is taller than I, you could say Sandra is taller than me. But if you are being tempted to use I in your expression, then make sure you add a verb, in which case this noun, or rather this word, than, will change its function from that of a preposition to a conjunction, making the expression a compound sentence. This is how we can talk about this expression in everyday usage. Our second non-standard expression from word set 82 is Sandra is more taller than Tina, and she is more and more beautiful than her. When you look at this expression very closely, you will discover that more taller as well as more and more beautiful have been underlined to indicate verbosity as well as a lexical error with the expression. Therefore, the error type to which the expression can be classified is verbosity or lexical error. We say that the expression is verbose because too many words than necessary have been used in it. For example, where we have more and more beautiful, things like that, more and more. So there's a repetition, and also there is a case of using too many words than needed in it. Then we are going to say that the expression has a lexical error because more has been used with this second degree comparative adjective taller. Now, what we can infer from this expression is that the speaker is trying to emphasize the beauty of Sandra as well as the height of Sandra above the height of Tina and the beauty of Tina. So there is a case of emphasis and distinction. However, the words have been wrongly used. Before we now talk about the standard way to pick up these words or to use these words, let us discuss the grammar tips. For the first one, we have here that the expression is a second degree comparative. And what is a second degree comparative? It is used to express inequality or a clear difference between two persons or two items. So this fellow or the speaker here is trying to express a clear distinction between the height of Sandra and the height of Tina, as well as the beauty of Sandra and the beauty of Tina. So in a case of second degree comparative, we cannot use more with taller. At ordinary level English, we do explain that this word more cannot be used with an adjective with ER. But with a detailed explanation, I would like you to know today that when you want to express a clear distinction between two items, we have three levels of comparison of adjectives: positive, comparative, and superlative. At positive level, you are describing just one item, and at comparative level, you are describing two items or two persons. And then at superlative level, you are describing three items or three persons. But when you want to express a clear distinction between two items or two persons, or give a detailed and qualitative description or analysis or inequality between those two persons or two items, you would have to move to a higher form of comparative description. And that is what we call second degree comparative. Like we have explained here, it is used to express inequality or a clear distinction. Now, it is very simple. When you want to get to that level of usage, you must understand that much may be used with an adjective with ER. An adjective that already has ER, that is a monosyllabic adjective. At comparative level, you simply add ER, and at superlative level, you add EST. So at comparative level, which is what we need here, because it is still two items that are being described in this expression, you are going to use much with the adjective to express second degree comparative description. But if the adjective is disyllabic or trisyllabic or polysyllabic, then in that case, at comparative level, you are going to have more. If it's pretty, you have more pretty, or you can also have prettier, of course. Since it's disyllabic, it can take ER or it takes more. Then in this case, if it is trisyllabic, like difficult, say more difficult, then to express the second degree comparative, you are going to attach much to it. So you're going to say the comparative level of the word is going to be more difficult. And if you want to express a clear difference in your comparative description, then you attach much to it and say, this work is not just more difficult than that, but it is much more difficult than that. So that is how we can use comparative or second degree comparative adjective. So back to our expression, the standard form or the standard way that we can use this expression could be things like: Sandra is much taller than Tina, and she is much more beautiful than her too. Remember, two must be employed in this expression because the expression already has two moving parts. Sandra is more taller than Tina, and she is more beautiful. So two things are already happening in this same expression. So you cannot just drop it without employing this descriptive word, which is two. You can have something like also or as well. They are all adjectives. So instead of saying Sandra is more taller than Tina and she's more and more beautiful than her, you could say Sandra is much taller than Tina and she's much more beautiful than her too, just like we have explained here. Remember, like we discussed under word set 81, that when you use than, then subject personal pronoun shouldn't be used here. Like in a case where someone is going to say something like, Sandra is much taller than Tina and she is much more beautiful than she. That will not be acceptable as explained under word set 81. So instead of saying Sandra is more taller than Tina and she is more and more beautiful than her, you could say Sandra is much taller than Tina and she's much more beautiful than her too. So this is how we can talk about this expression in everyday usage. Now let's go over our next word set, 83, which is she is the best of the two. Our next non-standard expression from word set 83 is John is the best of the two brothers, with the word the best underlined in the expression to indicate a lexical error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. So then, what are the grammar tips to explain that? Number one, if a choice has to be made between two items, you use the comparative adjective. That is, the adjective that has ER if it is monosyllabic, or the one that has more attached to it if it is disyllabic, trisyllabic, or polysyllabic. Then, for the second grammar tip, we have the form in which the expression is constructed. We have the particular or the first item, then it will be followed by D plus the comparative adjective that you want to use, then plus of D again before the second item or noun will come into the same expression. So let's look at that construction under the standard usage. We have John is the better of the two brothers. So instead of John is the best of the two brothers, you could say John is the better of the two brothers. So you are still talking about two items. So you cannot graduate to the best. You are going to say the better. And you must use this article D, so that when you say John is better of the two brothers, then it will become a substandard or a non-standard expression. Remember, the article D must be attached. So you're going to have, like we discussed under the second grammar tip, John is the better then of the two brothers. So that is how we can talk about this expression in everyday usage. With that, we move forward to our next expression from word set 84, which is she is the most tallest. Our next non-standard expression from word set 84 is Ngozi is the most tallest girl in our class, with the words most tallest underlined in the expression to indicate verbosity or semantic error. And that speaks of the error type to which the expression can be classified. Now, why do we say that the expression is verbose? The expression is verbose because too many words than needed have been used in it. Ngozi is the most tallest. The use of most in this expression is unnecessary. So we could simply say Ngozi is the tallest girl in our class. Let's go over the grammar tip before we come back to that. So under the grammar tips, we have that superlative adjectives with est cannot be used with most, just like I explained earlier. Then for the second grammar tip, we have that article D is used with a superlative adjective as it is definite. That one is already settled with this expression. So then we now go over the standard usage. Instead of saying Ngozi is the most tallest girl in our class, you could say Ngozi is the tallest in our class. Ngozi is the tallest girl in our class. So that is how we can analyze this expression in everyday English. With that, we'll go over to the next expression, which is she is cleverer than he. Our next non-standard expression from word set 86 is my bag is more superior than yours, with the words more superior than underlined in the expression to indicate verbosity as well as a lexical error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. Now, how do we explain that under the grammar tips? Number one, than is not used with adjectives ending in IOR. For example, superior, inferior, senior, junior, anterior, posterior, etc. And what's the reason for that? The words are already comparative in themselves, so more should not be used with them. Than should not be used with them. The only word that may be used with them is to. Therefore, the standard usage of this non-standard format could be something like, my bag is superior to yours. So instead of saying, my bag is more superior than yours, you could say, my bag is superior to yours. So that is how we can talk about this expression in everyday English. With that, we move forward to our next set of expression, which is, she is very unique. Our next non-standard expression from word set 86 is, my bag is more superior than yours, with the words more superior than underlined in the expression to indicate verbosity as well as a lexical error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. Now, how do we explain that under the grammar tips? Number one, than is not used with adjectives ending in IOR. For example, superior, inferior, senior, junior, anterior, posterior, etc. And what's the reason for that? The words are already comparative in themselves, so more should not be used with them. Than should not be used with them. The only word that may be used with them is to. Therefore, the standard usage of this non-standard format could be something like, my bag is superior to yours. So instead of saying, my bag is more superior than yours, you could say, my bag is superior to yours. So that is how we can talk about this expression in everyday English. With that, we move forward to our next set of expression, which is, she is very unique. Our next non-standard expression from word set 87 is, my sister is very unique, or my sister is very perfect. Now, when you look at the expression very closely, you will discover words like very unique and or very perfect underlined in the expression, indicating a lexical error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. Now, how can we explain that under the grammar tips? When we come over to the grammar tips, we have that just like the IOR word which we discussed under word set 86 as comparative, some other adjectives are adjectives of quality and they are absolute. In other words, they are superlative. Therefore, they cannot be compared in expressions. You cannot use more with them, you cannot use very with them, you cannot use to with them. And those adjectives of quality could be things like unique, things like perfect. So what are the standard ways that we can reconstruct this expression or expressions like we have here? For the first one, we can have things like, my sister is unique. So instead of saying, my sister is very unique, remove that word very and just use the word the way it is, because it's a perfect word or an absolute word which cannot be compared or has no comparison. Therefore, instead of saying my sister is very unique, you could say my sister is unique. And instead of saying my sister is very perfect, you would simply say my sister is perfect. So this is how we can talk about this expression in everyday usage. Our next non-standard expression from word set 88 is, I prefer a meal of rice than beans. When you look at the expression very closely, you would discover that the words prefer and than have been underlined in it to indicate a semantic error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. Now, let's go over to the grammar tips to explain that. Number one, the words prefer and preferable are used in comparative degrees only. That's number one. Then number two, To is normally used and not than, although the expression is comparative. So anytime you have this word, this particular word, prefer, and its adjective form, which is preferable, then what you are going to use is to and not than. Therefore, under the standard usage, we have I prefer a meal of rice to beans. So instead of saying I prefer a meal of rice than beans, you would say I prefer a meal of rice to beans. So this is how we can talk about this expression in everyday conversation. With that, we move over to our next word set, 89, which is my house is more far than yours. Our next non-standard expression from word set 89 is my house is more far than yours, with the words more and far underlined to indicate a lexical error, and that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. Now, how do we explain the problem with this expression, that is the use of more with the word far? Well, we'll go over to the grammar tips. We will have that far is a positive adjective and cannot be used with more. The word far is a positive adjective. You know, we have 3 levels of comparison, or if you like, 4 levels of comparison: positive, first degree comparative, second degree comparative, and superlative. But at the positive level, all adjectives do not agree with more. In other words, we cannot use the word far or a positive adjective to describe 2 nouns, because 2 items are being described in this expression, my house and your house. So we cannot use a positive adjective in an expression like this. The comparative form is farther. So the appropriate adjective that can be used in an expression like this is comparative adjective, like far, farther. That is the comparative form of the word far. So under the standard usage, we could have my house is farther than yours. So instead of my house is more far than yours, we are going to have my house is farther than yours. So that is how we can talk about this expression in everyday conversation. With that, we move over to our final word set, 19, which is the 2 first classes. Our final non-standard expression in this episode is the 2 first classes went smoothly. The 2 first classes went smoothly. When you look at the expression very closely, you would discover the words 2 first and classes underlined in it to indicate a semantic error. And that is the error type to which the expression can be classified. Then what is a semantic error again? A semantic error is the situation where the words in an expression are not properly organized or arranged in that expression. In other words, if the words that are used in an expression are disorderly or not properly organized, like I said before, then you are going to say that the expression has a semantic error. So, what are the grammar tips to actually explain this? Under the grammar tips, we have that ordinal numbers are used before cardinal numbers as adjectives. Ordinal numbers are numbers like first, numbers like second, as the case may be, and numbers like third. So these are ordinal numbers. Then what are cardinal numbers? Numbers like 1, numbers like 2, and numbers like 3. Now, when you want to use these words together, or these sort of numbers together in an expression, then you must remember to take ordinal numbers before you take cardinal numbers. So you're going to take numbers from this series before you take numbers from this series. So that is what is wrong with our expression. Our expression has taken 2 before, that is a cardinal number, before first, which is an ordinal number. And in the rules of adjective, that is when you are using cardinal numbers and ordinal numbers together, it is ordinal numbers that must be taken before cardinal numbers. So in that case, you are going to say first two classes and not two first classes. Cardinal cannot come before ordinal, but otherwise, ordinal would come before cardinal. So instead of saying the two first classes went smoothly, you would say the first two classes went smoothly, taking ordinal number before cardinal number. That is how we come to the end of this 10th episode in our 21 in 1 video series. I do hope you had a great time with this video today. Please kindly drop your comments and your questions under the video to keep the conversation going. And please remember to share, like, and subscribe. Stay blessed till we meet again.